What's up, guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brandon Smith. That candle was on like 2 seconds ago, but I'm pretty sure it's burned out. Yeah, I think it's burned out. It's burned out. It's done. Anyways, let's get right into it. The day is Sunday, December 13th, 2009. The animated film The Princess and Frog is #1 at the box office. The song Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z and Alicia Keys is #1 on the Billboard charts. And in just 3 days, astronomers will discover GJ 1214b, the first known exoplanet on which water could exist. Steven Koecher is a 30-year-old Mormon. Originally from Amarillo, Texas, Steven now lives in St. George, Utah. Steven has taken on a part-time job handing out flyers for a local window washing firm, and today his occupation takes him across state lines to Henderson, Nevada. He parks his white 2003 Chevrolet Cavalier at the end of a cul-de-sac, and pamphlets in hand, he makes his way down the street. Noon hits and Steven is captured by a security camera in the reflection of a car window. It is the last image of Steven Koecher that anyone will see. This day in mystery. Sunday, December 13th, 2009 in Henderson, Nevada is warmer than average for this time of year. The air is dry and cloud coverage is slight. The daytime high is 17 degrees Celsius. Steven Koecher is a 30-year-old man and devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Born in Amarillo, Texas, he has 3 brothers and 1 sister. In 1998, Steven pursued a career in communications. Like many other Mormons, Steven is drawn to Brigham Young University. During his tenure at the school, he served 2 years as a missionary in Brazil, where he taught English to the local children and learned Portuguese. He eventually transferred to the University of Utah, and in 2002, he graduates as a Ute with a degree in communications. After college, Koecher works for the Davis County Clipper in Woods Cross, Utah, alongside his father, Rolf, the executive editor. In 2007, he relocates to Salt Lake City, Utah, and takes on a job with the city's daily, the Salt Lake Tribune. But there is a problem with this role. He works in an overnight capacity, and the hours are not conducive to his lifestyle. Additionally, Steven, a native Texan, is not accustomed to the cold winters of Salt Lake City. In April 2009, eager for a new start in a warmer climate, he accepts a position with Matchbin, a company that hosts websites for community newspapers, and moves to St. George in the southern part of the state. However, just a month into his new employ, Steven is let go by Matchbin for not meeting his sales objectives. The termination is devastating. In 2009, America is mired in the Great Recession, and work is scarce. Over the next 7 months, Steven submits resumes to multiple companies, but he receives very little consideration. With the power company threatening to cut off his electricity and months behind in rent to his landlord, Steven gets a job with Travis's Window and Blind Cleaning, handing out flyers. Today, he is 215 kilometers from his home, handing out these flyers in Henderson, Nevada. At 9:47 a.m., Steven receives a call from Seth Aboud, another member of his church. He tells Steven that he is in Las Vegas and may not make it back to St. George for a church service, and asks Steven to officiate instead. Steven apologizes and tells Aboud that he too is in Las Vegas, but he can turn around and try to make it back. Aboud says it is unnecessary as he is already en route to St. George. The phone call ends. At 11:54 a.m., a surveillance camera catches a white car entering the Anthem neighborhood of Henderson, Nevada. The car parks at the very end of the cul-de-sac, and a man clad in a hoodie, khaki pants, and white running shoes, presumed to be Steven, exits the car. At 12 p.m., another camera sees the man walking down the sidewalk before exiting the frame and vanishing forever. On December 16, 2009, Sun City's Homeowners Association parking enforcement took note of the car at the end of the cul-de-sac and tried to find its owner. Through the windows of the car, they see the flyers for Travis's window and blind cleaning and call the company. They speak with Steven's boss, and he furnishes them with Steven's cell phone number. No one answers, so the parking officials leave a voicemail. On December 17th, Steven's mother, Deanne, retrieves the message. She gets in touch with the parking officials from Henderson and learns of Steven's car's abandonment. Deanne calls Steven's brothers and sisters. Like Deanne, none of them have heard from Steven since December 10th. Deanne calls the police and reports him missing, and the family spreads out and starts their own search. Some of the family heads to St. George, and some of the family heads to Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, the family visits jails, morgues, and hospitals. Steven is not in any of these locations. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police canvass the houses in the neighborhood where Koecher's car had been parked. No one reports talking to him or seeing him on the day in question. They are provided with CCTV from the area, including the last video we have of Steven in the cul-de-sac. The LVMPD employs helicopters, all-terrain vehicles, and sniffer dogs, all in the search for Steven. No trace of him is found. By Christmas, the media in Salt Lake City, St. George, and Las Vegas have all covered the case of Steven Koecher. A local dairy company even puts Koecher's picture on a milk carton, and the LVMPD put up the video of Steven on Sunday, December 13th on their YouTube channel. But still, no one can find the man. Where is Steven Koecher? In the days leading up to December 13th, 2009, Steven voyaged far from his St. George home. On December 10th, Koecher left home in the early morning hours and drove 480 kilometers north to Salt Lake City. He bought some gas with his debit card and then traveled west just over 200 kilometers to West Wendover, Nevada. He again purchased gas with his debit card and then traveled another 160 kilometers to the Ruby Valley Ranch of the Neff family. Koecher had previously dated Anne-Marie Neff and had been to their ranch before. Anne-Marie's parents were not expecting him, and he merely told them that he thought he would stop in to see her as he was in the area. Anne-Marie wasn't home and would not be anytime soon. The three had lunch together anyways before Steven left, saying he was on his way to visit family in Sacramento. He did not continue on to Sacramento, however, and instead he returned home. By the time he returned to St. George, he had driven nearly 1,800 kilometers. Later that week, on December 12th, Koecher again hit the road. In the morning, his phone pinged off a cell tower in Overton, Nevada, 80 kilometers from St. George. In the evening, he bought gas and snacks at a convenience store in Mesquite, Nevada, 68 kilometers northeast of Overton. 3 hours later, he was back in Utah at a Kmart just outside of St. George. Steven told no one about these travels, and to this day, the purpose of these visits remain unclear. Police questioned Anne-Marie after Steven's disappearance, and she told police the two had almost no contact since their breakup, and that she was definitely not expecting Steven on the day he showed up at her parents' ranch. Steven Koecher was last seen in the Anthem cul-de-sac around noon on December 13th, 2009. This, however, was not the last trace of him. Around 5 p.m. that day, his cell phone pinged a tower at the intersection of Arroyo Grande Boulevard and American Pacific Drive, more than 10 miles northeast of where he had parked. 2 hours after that, at 7 p.m., it pinged another tower near Whitney Ranch subdivision, 2 miles north of the previous ping. Early the next morning, on December 14th, the phone pinged a tower between Interstate 515 and Russell Road, 2 more miles north of the previous day's last ping. Koecher's landlord sent a text to the phone immediately following this, and then 2 hours later, the phone was used to check Koecher's voicemail. The phone remained in that tower's vicinity for the next 2 days before shutting off. The phone has never been found, and it has never accessed a network since. On December 6, 2009, just 1 week before the disappearance of Steven Koecher, a woman named Susan Powell disappeared from West Valley City, Utah. Susan had been married to a man named Joshua Powell since 2001. The relationship was not good. Susan's journal entries and email correspondence documented their marital discord. Joshua had been refusing to go to church anymore. His father had been making sexual advances towards his wife, and they had recently filed for bankruptcy with outstanding debts of over $200,000. However, the main source of strife in their marriage was Joshua's uber-controlling behavior. Susan had even gone so far as to write out a secret will that included the statement, "If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." On December 7th, Joshua left Susan sleeping at home and took the couple's 2 children, Charlie and Braden, on a camping excursion. By the time Joshua and the boys had returned home, the entire family had been reported missing, and police had already breached the family's home. Joshua told the police he hadn't seen Susan since shortly after midnight, and that when he left, she was sleeping soundly. West Valley City is over 6 hours away from Henderson, Nevada, where Steven disappeared. However, West Valley City is just 25 minutes from Salt Lake City, the city where Steven had previously lived and had traveled to just days before his disappearance. Susan Powell, like Steven Koecher, was a member of the LDS Church. Susan was 28 years old, just 2 years younger than Steven. The similarities between the two did not go unnoticed, with many on the internet making a nexus between the two's disappearances. By 2010, Joshua and his father were also making the connection, stating that Susan had left their family for Steven and the two had fled to Brazil, where Steven had served as a missionary, to elope. On February 5th, 2012, social worker Elizabeth Griffin Hall took Charlie and Braden to the home of Joshua Powell for a supervised visit. Joshua had lost custody of his children in the subsequent years, and as a result, this was the only opportunity for contact with his sons. When Hall arrived, Joshua opened the door and grabbed Charlie and Braden, taking them into his house and locking the door behind him. The social worker called 911 to report the incident. While waiting for the police to arrive, the house exploded. Joshua, Charlie, and Braden were all found dead inside. The coroner found that Joshua had killed Charlie and Braden with a hatchet before succumbing to carbon monoxide. On May 21st, 2013, West Valley City Police closed the investigation into the disappearance of Susan Powell. They concluded that she was killed by her husband on December 6, 2009. Alright, so what do I think happened? Well, before I discuss my theory, please be advised that I will be talking about suicide. So if this subject is at all triggering for you, I suggest you skip this part. I will insert a timestamp just here so you can avoid these details. Please know that good help is available should you need it. Be well and take care of yourself. To those of you that have stuck around, here we go with my theory. Plenty of people have speculated on the well-being of Steven Koecher. As we often see in the case of disappearances, we have two very different interpretations. The family believes that the missing to be in good spirits and optimistic about their future, and the people further removed from the missing believe they may have been troubled, depressed, and negative. Such is the case regarding Steven. When I read articles and watch videos about people who have disappeared, my biggest pet peeve is when people say that the person wouldn't have disappeared or killed themselves because they were upbeat and made plans for the future, such as buying groceries or booking a vacation. I hate this, so let me be clear here. Not one study exists academically or anecdotally that suggests this to be true. Sometimes a person is depressed for years and ceremonially gives up all of their possessions before leaving a note and eventually ending their lives. Sometimes people make long-term plans that morning and commit suicide that night. The sad reality is depression and suicidal ideation does not discriminate, and it certainly doesn't exhibit uniformly in every individual person. To think otherwise is to underestimate the condition. It can be a constant circumstance or an onset temper, but its potentiality should never be discounted. This is a disservice to those who are suffering. With Steven Koecher, what we do know is that both professionally and financially, he was struggling. He couldn't find steady work, and what little employ he did find did not satisfactorily pay his bills. He was 3 months behind on rent and faced an almost certain imminent termination of power. His family insists that they were more than willing to cover Steven's expenses, but Steven is 30 years old, and sometimes this is a hard burden to shoulder. We know that in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, both Steven's mom and dad had put money into his bank account. Too proud, Steven never touched the money. We also know that mere days prior to December 13th, Steven's landlord, fed up with Steven's dereliction of rent, had contacted Steven's father directly. His father provided assurances that the money would be paid, but Steven was reportedly furious with this escalation. So what happened on December 13th, 2009 in Henderson, Nevada? Popular theory suggests Steven was selling drugs or was under their influence. Others think that he was working with people to exploit the casino. Some think that he journeyed into the desert to find peace and ran afoul of circumstance, falling victim to an accident or a wild animal. Sadly, I believe the fate of Steven Koecher is less dramatic and more resignation. On December 13th, Steven parks his car in that Anthem cul-de-sac and begins his journey. He parks his car without strategy, only proximity, as the location is near enough to where he wants to end up. I don't believe he was in the area to distribute flyers, as the conventional narrative suggests, because he had that opportunity and none were passed out. A little ways away from the cul-de-sac now, he hails a cab into Las Vegas proper. He spends the next 2 hours in this area, taking in the sights and thinking back on his life. He next walks the 3.2 kilometers north to the Whitney Ranch subdivision and checks into a hotel. He spends the night. The next morning, he walks to the corner of Russell Avenue and intersection 515 and checks his voicemail one more time before throwing the phone in the trash. You may say, well, now why didn't anyone witness any of this and why haven't they come forward? And to this I say, well, Las Vegas is a very busy city and Steven isn't really a flashy guy. He wouldn't have stood out very well. Also, the area of Las Vegas that his phone last pinged in isn't exactly known for their civic responsibility. He bows his head and embarks on one final journey. Heading east, he walks 8 more kilometers into Nevada's Frenchman Mountains. Somewhere in the mountains now, he looks out at the Las Vegas skyline before finally succumbing to the elements. Tragedy continued to plague the Koecher family, and in February 2011, Steven's father, Rolf, passed away after a brief illness that may have been toxic shock syndrome. The family, stricken with loss, continues on in the search for Steven. In 2012, searchers scoured the desert south of the Henderson Executive Airport in response to a tip. Nothing of note was found. In 2015, inspired by a different tip, a local search and rescue group organized another effort, this time going into the hills south of Anthem. Again, nothing was found. Steven's family maintains a $10,000 reward to anyone who can provide information that will lead to a safe return or prosecution and conviction of anyone who may have done him harm. Thank you for listening to the story of Steven Koecher. Please like and subscribe. Before I go, please remember that you are a wonderful individual who is capable of good. And if you are struggling right now for any reason, as a lot of us are, please remember that we are in this together and you are here for a reason. Please be kind to yourself and anyone you come in contact with. I'm Brandon Smith, and I'll see you next time.